Okay friends, today we will focus on target switching and especially to switch targets fast and consistently. I had a major realization of what I am doing wrong when target switching, but more on that later. Let's start today's session with our first task. Oh, and all the tasks and the playlists are in the description as usual. Big shout out to Maddie once more for not only being the greatest aimer I've ever seen, but also for providing resources like today's playlist. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, one of my major weaknesses is to flick fast and precise. This is most prevalent in static clicking tasks, but also just as much in speed switching. And to work on one specific weakness, it is always a good idea to isolate that problem. That's why Speed Switch 180 is a great start to tackle exactly that. We have large targets that barely move, so we have to be less precise, but even more explosive with our flicks to get a solid score. At first, I have a hard time keeping up with my high scores pace, so I ask myself, what's the problem? If we slow things down, we can see that I'm having trouble keeping my rhythm because I miss one target, and from there on, I lose my focus and try to catch up again. This is a bad habit in my opinion, because you shouldn't try to catch up with your score, but execute good technique and learn to improve speed and precision over time. So whenever I notice I'm trying to simply catch up with my high score pace, I end the run and start over. This cycle repeats a couple of times until I'm warmed up with executing the tech as good as I can. And from there on, I can focus more on increasing my speed little by little. Usually, I move on to the next task whenever I get 2 times close to a high score, but I felt I could push my pace just a little bit more and got this final score. Next up, we have shimparallel. Shimparallel? Shimparallel! I don't know, I won't get it right. Yeah. It's a good mix of precision and speed. However, to me this feels less like a task where I can focus on one specific aspect of my aim, but almost like a benchmark, so I get my high score in and move on. Our third task is Pokeball Auto wide wall 6 targets, and this is a bit of a weird one to me. I think in the past I played this with individual clicks for every target, but today for some reason I just held mouse 1 down, and as a result of that I didn't really stop for each individual target, but just swiped across in one continuous motion. And I'm not entirely sure, but this doesn't feel like it's intended to be played that way. So I stopped and tried to force myself to stop on every single target. Then I got this nice little high score and I moved on. Now we come to one of my favorite tasks of today. devTS goaded NR static small. Man, these names. Anyways, this one forces me to keep track of the movements of the other targets, plus I have to be very precise with the smaller ones, and I feel like this builds a good habit of being aware of where other targets are. And because tasks always feel easier when you enjoy them, I pretty much immediately get my high score and I can move on. Now, I'm not sure what to think about this next one. It is a great task, no doubt, but because it is so close to the actual benchmark, the faster time to kill on these targets threw me off. I'm not sure if it is a good thing not to rely on the time to kill and adapt, or if this is a little too much for me at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I got a really nice high score, but I played the actual benchmark right after and had to pretty much relearn my rhythm. voxTargetSwitch 2 feels almost like an in-game situation where you have targets closer to you as well as further in the distance. I'm not quite sure, but I feel like this more obvious 3D aspect of this task made it a little easier for me to get a nice little high score. I may have to revisit this task more isolated, however, because I feel like my score is actually not that good and can be pushed way further. Now, this last task before we get to the benchmarks was really hard for me. It forces you to listen to the respawn sound of new targets, keep track of where the targets are around you, and you have to aim straight up and down a lot, which always feels a little awkward. Don't get me wrong, I think this is a great task, and that's because I really try to improve. I kept saying to myself, okay, you got 90, now get 91, and then 92. But no matter how much I tried, I didn't get past 91. I think at this point I didn't have the energy anymore to really think about what could help me improve, and I just wanted to force it. Whenever that happens, I think either find that extra bit of motivation, or just move on, because this is where bad habits are born, when you just want to improve the score and nothing else. With devTS, I had some trouble because, like I said, my rhythm was adjusted to the speed version of this task and I had a hard time to adapt. I tried and tried, but couldn't get a high score and didn't notice yet, but I think my technique was also wrong. But it has something to do with how I look at targets rather than my arm and hand movements. So I sadly couldn't improve and moved on to EddieTS, the second benchmark of today. And that's where I realized, instead of hard focus on the target you are on at the moment, I need to learn to spend a little more time at the end of each kill to scout for my next target within my peripheral vision and be aware of its position, and in this case also its movement. This was hard, but I wanted to get this right at least once. And in the end it paid off. Not only have I gotten a new high score, but said high score also pushed me over the edge of becoming a Jade rank in the Voltaic benchmarks. All in all, a nice but little bit frustrating session. Still, it's amazing how much I realize what I can do better. And as long as there's things I can improve at, I at least know what to do. And as always, here are some highlights from today's game session. I hope you enjoyed and maybe learned something. See you next time. Bye!